Hey everybody, I'm not going to use the mic, so I'll project, but my projecting will require that you guys are relatively quiet listening. I'll be happy to take questions soon. I have provided you with Rabbi Finley's super duper outline. I won't obviously be covering the whole thing. I just want to cover a few things. I'll make a little presentation, take your pointed questions, try to respond. I'll present a second thing, and you can ask questions. I'll respond as well as I can. And then anything else you want to talk about in the world or from my outline. So first of all, if you look at the outline, I want you to go down to specific values shaped by philosophy and religion as interpreted by Rabbi Finley. By the way, I am recording myself. I might put my part up on Instagram or something, but you won't be included because the camera's only facing me. All right, you all good? Oh, you guys want to be on my camera? Yeah. Wow, all right. So when you got, does anybody not want to be? Does anybody not want to be? Okay, I'll turn the camera around when time's right. Okay, all right, cool. Let me actually do that now. Can I? Okay, you know what? I am not that technologically proficient, so you'll have to. Okay, who's that person? All right. Well, if anybody else wants to film post, you have my complete permission. Okay. All right. So, what are the two things I want to bring up? I want to bring up two things that I think, if you're at all reflective, present to the world, present to other people, there are two things you have to know about. One is the realm of justice, and one is the realm of love. Now, why justice? You'll know that in all the debates going on, people are searching for the right answer, the true answer, the fair answer, in so many things just across the world, across the political spectrum. Secondly, one thing I know from my years of counseling, people actually think they know how to love other people well, but most don't. People think they know how to receive the love of another person, most actually don't. And whom you choose as a life partner, any romantic relationship, especially long-term, that will be the single most important decision you will make in your life. Not only whom you choose, but how you decide to comport yourself and how the other person comports themselves to you. I know many people who are wealthy and famous. You think they have everything. They look like celebrities. In the home, they're suffering terribly because of the conflict in the relationship and the unkindness. You may have seen this in your homes. If you do, I'm sorry to hear that. You may have seen this in the life of other people. You may have read about it. Maybe you've seen it in reality TV or movies. But you all know what I'm talking about. Now, when I go back to myself when I was a senior in high school, I graduated from Linwood High School in 1973. If anybody's curious to know, go Knights. No one ever told me about this. No one ever told me there are better and worse ways to love and be loved. There are actually rules of human conduct. And if you follow those rules and other people follow the rules, your life is guaranteed to go better. If you and others don't follow the rules, your life is guaranteed to be miserable. Now, most people muddle through on the middle path. I would prefer that all of you strive toward excellence in how you comport yourself with other people and how other people comport themselves with you. Let's start with the first one, with justice. There are two basic approaches toward what is just, fair, and true. One is called relativism. One is called realism. Now, from what I remember, I used to teach Holocaust at USC for 10 years. So I've taught both the Holocaust as history, but also trying to morally assess what happened. So here's what I discovered. It was mostly sophomores in the class. Nearly every student who came into the class was a moral relativist, something of a utilitarian, which means right and wrong depends on the person, right and wrong depends on the culture. They would say that as if they learned it from third grade on, which many did. The problem is, nobody really believed it when you talk about anything that they cared about. So I'll give you an example from American culture. People might say right and wrong depends on the culture, depends on the individual. And then you mentioned slavery. Is slavery wrong depending on where you live geographically? Which means south of the Mason-Dixon line, it was right. North of the Mason-Dixon line, it was wrong. Who's to know? There's no right answer. I don't think any thoughtful person would ever say that, and I hope no thoughtful person believes it. So you might say, because you don't want to be confrontational, you don't want to sound dogmatic, that there really are better and worse answers to moral questions. Not that I personally know what every moral question is. I certainly don't know the answer, but I know it's worth talking about. And the goal of the conversation is not your opinion and my opinion. The goal of the conversation is reasonably trying to understand what is truly better morally and worse. So what I'm offering to you is whenever you have these conversations, you don't use the conversation killer, that's just your opinion. Why? Because it's obvious. They just said it. And it's not just their opinion. There are basically two kinds of opinions. Informed opinions, which means opinions formed by reason, opinions formed by the search for truth, for what is truly morally better and worse, and opinions that are uninformed, things that people just have, but they're not willing to present it. They're not willing to give an account of it. They're satisfied by saying, well, it's just my opinion. So sometimes when I talk about some moral issue with somebody says, well, it's just my opinion. I say, well, that's obvious because you just said it. The question is, can you give an account? Can you back it up? Can you reason? Are we searching to share opinions? We might as well just stop right now because you know what I think, I know what you think. Or are we engaged in the search for truth? That's a hard thing because most people actually don't know how to engage in the search for truth, especially what is morally better and worse. But there is a way. For me, it's rooted, theoretically at least, mostly in Socrates, Plato, the Stoics, other Greco-Roman philosophers. Certainly in the Jewish tradition, there's an understanding that there truly is morally better and worse. You'll find philosophical tractates on it. The Bible, the Mishnah, and the Talmud typically work more intuitively, not as programmatically as Socrates, Plato, but it's still there. So what I've discovered is there actually is a way to reason about truth and to reason about better and worse answers to moral questions. So you're going to be going to places where you're going to be strongly challenged. What is true? What is right? What is good? I hope you know how to answer. I hope if you have a view that you can back it up. The Greeks call it a statement with an account. It's called logos. That you can give a statement with an account, you can read something through and then stop and say, now I'd be happy to hear your theory, your account, your reasoning. And ideally, whenever I've had these conversations with people, we actually benefit each other. I truly enjoy hearing the reasoned account of someone who differs with me. I always grow morally. I always grow intellectually if someone can give a reasoned account of what they think, why they think, especially if they differ with me. I want to hear them out because I will go away an edified person. I will go away a better person. So my hope for you, my charge for you as you embark on your years of post-high school, college, post-college, dealing with our national, societal, cultural issues, that you will be an agent, not only for the good, but for rationality, reasonableness, civil discourse, and so forth. If you're that person, you will only make things better everywhere you go. Okay? I'll put a pause there. Any questions, comments about any of that? Yes, please.
So you believe there is one true moral right and wrong?
Okay, do I believe there's one true moral right and wrong? In some ideal way that is nonsensical and has no meaning or purpose? Yeah, I believe there are better and worse answers to moral questions. So if you said to me, do I believe that torture, rape of a child is wrong in all places all the time? Yeah, I would say there's probably one answer. But that's not what I said. So I said there are better and worse answers to moral questions. I chose those words carefully. I said I actually can't even define exactly what a moral question is. So I call this a humble moral realism. And I certainly don't know the answers to moral questions, other than if we're going to discuss a moral issue, even with no end in sight, we're talking about something. We're talking about something real, meaning I'm a moral realist. So I'm not going to say my opinion versus your opinion, all opinions are equal, who's to know? I'm not interested in that conversation. So if you say something is true or right or moral or good, I want you to back it up. Because I don't think we're talking about nonsense. I think we're talking about things that really deeply matter. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
You have a follow-up?
I don't believe there is any true right or anything like that.
So if a person says, I don't believe there's any true right about anything.
I feel there's too many outside factors that can determine what can be right.
Okay, so what's your name, please?
Jordan.
Okay, so there are too many factors. That's called complexity.
Yeah.
So many people, when they're confronted with complexity, think because there's complexity, there's no better or worse answer.
I was raised.
Does that y'all hear that? Because of complexity, because there are so many different opinions, people think, well, since there are so many different opinions, there can't be a better or worse answer. So I say that's a fallacy, but I might be wrong. So go ahead and make your point.
Yeah, I believe I was raised on basically somebody else's views on right and wrong, how I was brought up. Let's say before everything existed and somebody decided that murder, first time murder.
Okay, try to get to your point. The first murder in the history of humanity, 200,000 years ago.
Decided, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. How would murder be seen today?
Okay, so here's the question. This is evolutionary psychology, right? We're talking about when human beings first appear on the planet, let's say roughly 200,000 years ago. Suddenly, Homo sapiens comes into being. They have language. They have values. They have morals. The first person, right? All of a sudden, somebody shows up. Or it's a cosmic event. We have no idea. But when somebody sees someone unjustly murdered, what occurs to them is, that's wrong. That's actually wrong. Does anybody else notice this? Well, the other human being will say, yeah, that was actually wrong. Well, what are we going to do about it? Well, how big is the murderer? Right? Because we don't want murderers in the midst. Right? If we can take the murderer, what are we going to do? Two Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys, what are we going to do? I mean, what are you going to do if you see a murderer and you can take him? What are you going to do? Take him. You're going to take him out. You're going to choke him out, right? You're going to let a murderer walk around and murder somebody else? I don't think so. I hope not. Right? No, I'm talking about a murderer. So from a moral realist perspective, disarming a murderer is not the same as murder. It's called disarming a murderer. So if somebody takes an innocent life, as a citizen, I feel not just the right, but also the duty to immobilize the murderer so they don't murder somebody else. Now, you can differ with me, but I don't think from a human condition perspective, we should be indifferent to evil. Now, people say, well, I don't believe in evil. That's okay. We can differ here. I'm presenting my point of view because you may have never heard it. You may have never heard someone say, there actually are better and worse answers to moral questions. Someone to say, there actually is evil, and we can speak about it in a reasonable way, as you and I are doing now. Okay? So if you've never heard this before, you're hearing it now. And I think it's one of the most important questions to deal with. Because if we go further and someone says, I don't know, transgender rights. You say, there's no such thing as rights. It's all made up. And then someone says, human rights. There's no such thing as human rights. It's all made up. Well, that's called a conversation stopper. Somebody else can say, well, I actually think there's something called human rights, and can we talk about it? One person can say, it's all made up. It's not worth talking about. It's like talking about a flying pink rhinoceros. It just doesn't exist. Or you can say, they probably do exist. We don't know how because they're not empirical, right? It's more like a value, but it's worth talking about. Okay, that's my only point. I'm not trying to persuade you to be a moral realist. I want you to understand what a moral realist thinks. And you can say to yourself, yeah, I think I'm a moral realist. Or say, no, I'm not a moral realist. I'm a complete relativist, subjectivist. And I say, Gesundheit, hey, go healthy with your point of view. I just want to give you the option of being a moral realist. Okay? Anybody? Yes, please.
For a moral realist, can culture or religion ever be like valid reasoning? Or
Sure. Thank you for that. So culture, society, history, religion, philosophy, all these weigh in on how we morally assess something. They all weigh in. We call that complexity. Now, here's the interesting thing. You can look at something called the Jewish religion. There's incredible complexity in one religion. You look in any religion, there's complexity, contradictions, difference of opinions. So there's no such thing as Jewish ethics. There's the study of Jewish ethics, which is very diverse. Same with Christian ethics, Islamic ethics, Far Eastern religion ethics. I have a doctorate in religion, so I've studied these. My degree's in religion-social ethics. So now the fact that there's diversity doesn't mean that all of these traditions, philosophic and religious, in general believe there are better and worse answers to moral questions. I mean, anytime they propose a moral question, or let's say character ethics. People can say, well, in Zen Buddhism is all nothingness, but then there are tractates on character ethics in Zen Buddhism. There are tractates on character ethics in Hinduism. So even the religions that say it's all nothing, but here's what good character is. I think that's a bit of a contradiction. I don't care because my religion is filled with contradictions. So my answer to you is, certainly I'm shaped by my study of philosophy, my study of my religion. I'm more of an expert in Western religion than Eastern religions, but I've studied Eastern religions. So I study more or less the whole thing, and then I try to work this through and come up with a reasonable account for what I believe to be true. Does that answer your question? Okay? Yeah, right here. And then I'll work to the back of the room. Go ahead.
Can you give a explanation about what your opinion is on better and worse answers for moral questions, and how can you also apply that to like the real everyday life?
Okay, so real everyday life. You're a real everyday person, so give me a question.
What do I eat for lunch today?
Okay, so the moral answer would be, in general, nothing that harms your body in a predictable way. Because, in my opinion, if you look at my outline, we actually have, it's going to sound strange, but among the duties to the self are to be safe and healthy physically, mentally, emotionally, morally, and spiritually. I believe those are duties to the self. So if a person eats terrible food and they're going to make themselves unhealthy, I would say it sounds kind of strange, but remember, I'm a religious person. I think life is a gift. And I think I have duties to preserve my life and the life of other people. So someone say, well, that's nonsense. You don't have moral duties to the self. Okay, so we differ. But if you ask me what should you eat for lunch, eat anything you want, just don't kill yourself. Does that sound reasonable to you? I'm not asking if you agree, but does it sound reasonable?
No, it's definitely reasonable. But for instance, like would you go to Chick-fil-A right now and you eat like copious amounts of fried chicken?
Are you asking Finley or as you meaning one?
As like one, as an individual.
From what I've read, fried food is not sustainable for human health. I've read that. I'm not a physician. But I don't eat, I'm more or less a vegan. So no, I'm not a moral vegan, I'm a health vegan. I mean, if somebody else here wants to eat fowl, I'm not going to say you're a bad person. I don't.
I mean, my question though, it's like, even though
Okay, I think I've made my point.
Okay.
If you have a different follow-up, happy to hear it.
Yeah, my different follow-up is like food, like fried food. Can that satisfy like, I really want fried chicken right now, even though it's like bad for me? Those are two different like.
That's a great question. So we're going to end this here. Okay, now let's say I want fried food, but I know it's bad for me. That's not a question. That's called weakness. I'm sorry, but if I know that something is bad for me, and I know it's bad for me, and I eat it anyway, that's just character weakness. I didn't say it's morally wrong. I just say if I know it's bad and I know I'm hurting myself, I probably shouldn't do it. And if I do it consistently, I may have to think about my own standard for myself. Is that clear? So I think if you say, I know it's bad, but I'm going to do it anyway, you might want to look at that. Okay, see, I've hit a button. Okay, just all calm down. In general, you look at my outline, I think we should be safe and healthy. Now, if you differ, that's fine. But I think if I were counseling a young person and they told me about that they don't eat well, they don't sleep well, they smoke pot all day, they're not engaging in conduct that would be safe and healthy, I say you might want to just turn that down a little bit and take a different path. They say, but I don't want to sleep well, I don't want to eat well, I want to stay stoned all the time. I say, far be it from me to try to change you. I can just tell you from my life experience, counseling young people, that doesn't go well. But it's up to you. I'm not at all judgmental. I'll tell you what I think I see and I know. Okay, is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay, all the way in the back. I see.
Okay, you made a really interesting point about I might have a follow-up question to you, but I didn't understand the point you were making, and I wanted to ask if you might explain further about like the belief in the good and evil of slavery and how like the fact that it's obviously not strictly divided by the border line.
Yeah, right.
Wondering if you could. I think the point like went over my head. Can you explain
Okay,
it
the
again?
point that might have gone over your head. See, many people, when they talk about morality, they start by believing that there are not actually better and worse answers to moral questions. That's their axiom. That's their starting place. So my starting place is there actually are better and worse answers to moral questions. So the people on the other side, their challenge to me is, if there were truly better and worse answers to moral questions, why is there such complexity in understanding what's better and worse? So they say, isn't it all about society? Isn't it all about culture? Isn't it all about geography? Right and wrong in one part of the world might be different from right and wrong in another part of the world. That's what I hear all the time ever since I began to study this stuff. Does that sound familiar to you? Okay, so I tell you why I don't believe it. Part of the reason I don't believe it is, then you would have to draw a border somewhere and take a poll. How many people in this geographic region think it's okay to murder Jews? So you conduct a poll. And the poll says, well, 50% plus one believe Jews are subhuman and therefore it's okay to murder them. Does that make it true? No, I don't think so. So because I taught the Holocaust course, where when I would teach the Holocaust, students would say, isn't that cultural? Isn't that subjective? I say, I don't think so. I don't think murdering innocent people is right or wrong depending on geographic borders. Now, that's my view. If you think that, far be it from me to try to change your opinion. I just want you to know there is a view called moral realism. I invite you to consider it.
I agree with what you're saying.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I think,
I'm glad.
would you not consider social and like geographical aspects and take them into account when?
Sure. Let me repeat, just as I mentioned, as for this person over, what's your name? As I said to Abby, of course, history, geography, society, culture, philosophy, religion, family, there are so many things that shape a moral point of view. Nevertheless, if you and I got into a deep conversation and I heard how different your life is from mine, we're going to talk about what's morally better and worse. We have to find a way to reason with each other and not say, well, since I grew up here, it's right, and since you grew up there, it's wrong. That's not a satisfactory answer for me. I actually think you and I could probably overcome, to some degree, our individual stories and maybe find some platform of reasoning with each other. And you might demonstrate to me from reasoning with me that there actually is a better and worse answer that I didn't see before. See, I would invite that conversation. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. And right behind you.
Can I ask you a question about yourself?
About my health?
Yeah.
Sure.
About you.
About me?
Do you meditate?
Pardon me?
Do you meditate?
Yeah. Yes, I meditate.
And when did that start?
Pardon me?
How long have you been meditating and when did that start?
That's an interesting question. Well, I was very blessed when I was in junior and high school that I had a science teacher who was actually a mystic. So he recruited me, a very interesting method. I'll tell you about it. He was my science teacher. He would start to present, and then he would say something like, you all study science, right? Yeah. You remember spontaneous combustion? You know where stuff came from? And he said, people believed in spontaneous combustion because there was a reality they couldn't see. I went, whoa, is he looking at me? So when he was teaching science, he would come up with some interesting question and drill his eyes right on me. So I thought, okay, this is super weird. So I came to him after school one day. It was Mr. Bishop. I said, Mr. Bishop, sometimes when you teach, I feel you're looking right at me. And he goes, I was waiting for you to notice. I said, what's up? And he presented a little about who he was, and he said, do you want to study with me? I said, sure. This was in science classroom S106, meaning the science wing. So I studied with Mr. Bishop Wednesday afternoons through most of my junior year and all of my senior year. He taught me how to be a mystic and how to meditate. That's the short answer to your question.
I noticed page on here was really interesting about knowing you have a higher self and soul.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that somewhat connects to meditating and sort of like
That is exactly right.
and I feel like hearing about your education and also your time serving, I feel like you have to sort of connect to something more spiritual in a way, and I feel like meditation.
You're so. What's your name?
Eva.
These are really insightful questions because, see, one thing that Jack Bishop taught me was to ascend into my higher self. And there was, as it were, a light on at the highest point of my being. And the light was always on, but the attic door was closed. So my job was to open the attic door and go into that chamber of light by which I assessed my life, including questions of moral realism. So now that's what I'll call spirit. I learned more about soul from studying the work of Carl Jung and James Hillman. So for me, soul is more of a Jungian idea. Spirit is more of a classically meditative, you might say, spiritual idea. For me, they're connected, but not exactly the same.
Yeah, because sort of like I was like the spiritual stuff and stuff like that. I was sort of doing some research, and I found like the Baha'i religion and how like they believe that our spirits are like going through human vessels and then like through
Our spirits are what exactly, please?
like we're spiritual beings going through human vessels.
That's a nice phrase. We're spiritual beings going through a human experience. I like that
And
phrase.
I sort of like thought about that, and I feel like that really reshapes a lot of values and morals and things you have when you're going.
Well, Eva,
Yeah.
you and I might have a similar spiritual personality, because when let's all be quiet. See, when Mr. Bishop presented this to me, I didn't resist.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, so this is true. So now what I noticed, if I can just do one more autobiographical statement, because you did bring up my military service. One thing I noticed was, and this was Southern California in the 71, 72, 73, I was not living according to my values. I knew I was on the wrong path. I had to get out of high school, and I knew that I wasn't ready to go to college, because if I just went to college, it would be more of the same. So I was going to go to an ashram. I was going to go like the vow of silence, shave my head, don't talk, but there's no GI Bill at the end of that. So I said, where can I go where they shave my head, rigorous discipline, and I can't talk? Well, Marine Corps boot camp. And I got the GI Bill at the end. Wasn't that great? So I signed up. Gave me everything I wanted.
Did you enjoy it?
The question is, did I enjoy it? Right at the moment when you're on your 200th push-up, not exactly. But when I thought about myself at the end of the day, I saw what I was capable of, what my body could endure, the way my spirit grew. In the middle of it, no. At the end of the day, wow. Because the only way that a person like me could get through it was spiritually. That my spirit was stronger than my body. Because in Marine Corps boot camp, they break you down. I mean, they will push you to your breaking point. I remember one time where you have to stay in step. So we're running in step, heavy rifles running down the beach, and of course we fall out of step. So they're running, as get in step. 80 guys in my platoon drop one by one. Just drop. I remember dropping, breathing sand. The drill instructor looks at this strewn out platoon, and there's a thing in the Marine Corps called the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir, where Marines were surrounded on all sides by the Chinese army. You know what the division commander said? He said, poor bastards, we can attack in any direction. Okay? They fought their way out and brought their dead. Okay? Now, we were taught this story many times. Happens to be true. So he looked at us and said, you weak people would have left the dead. we all stood up. And I felt myself standing up. All the pain and exhaustion went out of my body. I picked up my 14-pound rifle, fully equipped. I felt nothing but elation because I was reminded of my identity. And I remember thinking about that. How can my identity be stronger than my body? I'm a Marine. We don't leave the dead behind. We don't faint from exhaustion. It was clearly, it was a life-changing moment for me. And that moment, I remember it so vividly. My spirit is stronger than my body. So I had many of those experiences in boot camp that have stayed with me my entire life. Yeah.
Thank you.
They built it for that. They built it for that. Yes, please.
Has your practice of martial arts affected your philosophical ideas or personal beliefs?
Thank you. Absolutely. The question is, has my practice of martial arts? So I did basic martial arts in the military. I studied Shotokan karate for about 20 years, so I was pretty good with my hands and feet. I watched this will date all of you because none of you were born yet, but I watched the UFC at the end of the 90s, and I saw the Gracie family dismantle every karate guy, and I went, uh-oh, I've been studying the wrong martial art. So in the year 2000, 45 years old, 50 pounds overweight, I started studying Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, okay? Wow. Karate guys would walk in, right? As you know, we just dismantle them, get them down, grapple, tap them out. Now, what I realized Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is it's incremental, white to blue to purple, brown, black. It's an incremental path, stage by stage. So in my counseling practice, for example, when couples come to me for counseling, first thing, stop speaking with anger. Knock off the criticism, which is unkindly pointing out someone's fault. Knock off the unsolicited advice. Quit complaining to each other about each other. Stop with the condemnatory language, accusing, blaming, labeling, etc. And don't let escalating conflict go more than 3 rounds. I said, okay, we can spend a month on that, but if you can't do that, we can't continue, because that's white belt stuff. So I said to people, you got to train. Now I'm going to say to all of you, whatever relationship you have, reduce speaking in anger or letting someone else speak to you with anger. That's number 1 for the rest of your lives. Number 2, don't criticize people, which means speak unkindly about them. Knock off unsolicited advice. You may have lived your whole life with unsolicited advice, typically from a parent or a teacher. You can ask them to knock it off because it doesn't feel good, because of what it points out is your inadequacy. Someone knows and they're going to school you. You can say, thank you so much, I'm done for now. Okay? Don't do it to other people. Don't complain to other people about themselves, usually through insincere why questions. Why are you doing that? Why didn't you do your homework? Why are you standing there? It's not a sincere question. It's a complaint. So in my family, we say question or complaint. If they say, Daddy, why are you standing there? Question or complaint. Okay, Daddy, it's a complaint, you look weird. Okay, thank you very much. I'll try to just stop standing there. If I say, why did you do your homework? Daddy, question or complaint. I withdraw the question because it was a complaint. I said I'm not complaining. So no criticizing, including unsolicited advice. No complaining, including insincere why questions. Certainly no condemnatory language. It actually is very hurtful for people. And if you find yourself in escalating conflict after 3 go-arounds, walk away. If you do this is basic white belt relationships. Your life will go better, and everybody around you's life will go better. So now here's what I learned is, that's white belt stuff. You can't get to the blue belt without the white belt. So people say to me, what about intimacy? Like, I want to be a blue belt. I said, well, master the white belt. You master the white belt, we'll get to the blue belt. Master the blue belt, we'll get to the purple belt. So what I learned from jiu-jitsu, it's all incremental, including thinking. May I give you an example? A person says to me, somebody said to me that God brought me to this moment. Therefore what? All moments are profound? I said, okay. Therefore what? Now what? I don't know, live consciously? You could have started there. You don't have to believe that God brought you to a given moment to live consciously. That's like extra thoughts. Just say life is filled with significance and a conscious life better than an unconscious life. All right, we don't need to bring God into it. So what I found is people fill themselves with extra thoughts. Do you understand? Let's get to the real thought. So what do we see this in jiu-jitsu? Extra moves. Like to get from A to B, they fill all kind of, right? They fill it with like filler moves. And we said, you need to get clean, precise moves from A to B. Same thing philosophically, theologically, spiritually, morally. Cut out the stuff that doesn't matter. So what I have discovered in helping people your age think through questions, wow, the filler stuff that they have in their heads that prevents them from getting anywhere. So what I learned from jiu-jitsu is precision. Get from A to B without a lot of filler moves. That's just, I can give you 30 examples, that's just 2. It's a great intuitive question, by the way. Sure, go ahead, you got a follow-up?
I also wanted to ask, and I agree with everything you had to say.
I'm so pleased, I'm really pleased to hear
But
that.
I just wanted to ask you, for the sake of asking, if someone believes that, let's say God has brought them to a specific moment, but we regard that idea as filler, do you think that could be seen in a do you think that could be
Thank you, that's a great question. You see, if someone's coming for counsel, they say, I was somewhere and someone said to me, God brought you to this moment. Okay, I have a seeking suspicion. The person saying it has an agenda. See, if I say, God brought you to this moment with me, it's a little bit self-aggrandizing, right? Right? So whenever someone said to me, God brought them that moment, I said, maybe not. I don't know. Who knows? Question is, what are you going to do from this encounter? So I'm suspicious of people that say, God brought you to me, right? My radar goes up. So I say, so what does that mean? Well, I should listen to what they say. I said, that's probably generally true about most people. So what they have is people fill other people's heads with filler, oftentimes because they have an agenda. So people like you guys, I just want to warn you. There are people with agendas that will use innocuous, high-sounding phrases as, you'll excuse me for being so blunt, as maybe an unconscious manipulation, right? So what I try to do is, for myself and all of you, learn to think precisely. Learn to think carefully. Be able to identify what I call filler things. Get down to the precise thing that you're after. Now, maybe God brings you to this. Maybe God brought me to this moment so you guys could all teach me. I don't know. But that doesn't change my therefore, which is, I want to listen to every question sincerely and act as if I've never heard it before and give the best answer I can. All right? Yes?
I have a couple.
Sure, please.
Okay, so when did the rabbi part of your story take place? And when did you go to school for that?
When did the rabbi story take place?
Yeah.
Pretty soon after the beach incident.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Kind of.
Do you understand?
A little.
Okay. Can I fill it out?
Yes, sure. Go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah.
All right. Briefly, the story changed my life.
Okay.
The story of the chosen reservoir changed my physical being. So I thought to myself, the power of narrative.
Okay.
That's kind of what did it.
I think like
Am I out of time? Did I run over? Okay, I've run over. So go ahead. You finish up, and I'll take. Look, I want to be respectful, so I'll answer your. All right. Can I go on a little bit longer? Is that okay? Got it. So I'll take your question, and then you have a question over here. Okay, right over here. Finish. Tufts question.
yes.
A tough question.
Yes. Okay. So like morally speaking, I think a lot of people have issues with ascribing to like a certain religion or
Morally speaking, people have a tough time ascribing to a religion. Okay.
like deciding which one.
Deciding which
better
religion
than
is better than another.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're a rabbi. So
I am,
my guess
correct.
Is you, I don't know.
Devoted to-
You're devoted to Judaism.
Correct.
Yes.
Mhm.
I don't know if you do anything else related to other religions.
Yes, I've studied other religions. They greatly shaped me. There are things in other religions that Judaism doesn't have.
Okay. My question basically was just why Judaism.
It's good enough. I mean, there's no. No, I'm born Jewish. Like, I'm born Jewish. I went through the bar mitzvah thing.
Okay. So
I-
who is your family?
Yeah, mostly family. And listen, I had people try to evangelize me into Christianity, and people want me to become a Buddhist or a Hindu, and I thought, yeah, what I have actually is good enough. Why? Because Judaism is so open-minded about these things. I mean, like we agree to light Shabbat candles, let's say as a norm. What it means, wow, there's a whole panoply of opinions about it. Some are Buddhist oriented, some are Hindu oriented, some are Jungian, some are Platonic. The thing is, we agree to light candles. What it means, there is a whole spectrum of meaning. So what I discovered in the Jewish tradition, we're more bound by practice, and your beliefs and your understanding is an open game. I really like that. Okay, so that's the thing I like the most about being Jewish. Okay, and I think it's the last question over here before my time is completely up.
This is kind of piggybacking on what Jordan was talking about earlier,
Okay.
about like the first person who would like kill someone. Would you agree that like moral benchmarks are kind of like a social construct? They happen just to be what society like.
Do I believe that moral benchmarks are societal constructs? Yes, based on moral intuitions. Of course, everything's a societal construct based on what?
So the question
Is that my answer clear?
Yeah. So I had a follow-up question. Which
Okay,
was,
go ahead. Shh. We're almost done. I'm almost done, folks. One last
If everything
follow-up.
kind of like let's say like all of our laws are based off of like what we believe is, I don't want to say all, but majority are like morally right or wrong. Is there merit to these societal constructs if they're always
All right,
changing
so
or?
thank you. So are our Judaism and the United States are based on moral realism. You can like Jefferson or not, but when he wrote, all men, meaning all human beings, are endowed with rights from God, that's a moral realism statement. Among them are life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That's a moral realism statement. From that, our whole system of law is generated, including the Constitution. I think that's fair to say. So it's based on moral realism, but then constructed by society, obviously. Now, I was alive, I was born in 1954. So I watched Martin Luther King on television. And we subscribed to Time magazine and Look magazine and Life magazine. Like, I was a thoughtful kid. I was already reading and looking at that stuff. And I saw our country change right before my eyes because somebody made a case. Somebody eloquent and charismatic and convincing made a case to the American people. And between 1960 and 1970, this country fundamentally changed its direction. So which means our societal construct was deconstructed and a new societal construct was constructed because of a belief in what was morally right and true. I saw it with my own eyes. So I am convinced in moral realism, there are better and worse answers to moral questions. Societies are constructed on those answers, and society can be reconstructed on a better answer. Okay? All right, that's it for today. Thank you very much, everybody.